Hello everyone, this is Derek with Reef Automation, and in today's video, we're going to go over a buyer's guide on the top three automation slash controllers on the market. Specifically, the Neptune Systems Apex, the Profilux 4 by GHL, and the CoralVue HYDROS. And we're going to go into the pros and cons of each system, so that way, if you're a new buyer out there, you can have a general idea of what to expect depending on which system you decide to go with, and also a little bit of help in choosing between the three of them. So let's get started. And the first one we're going to discuss is the Apex by Neptune Systems. Okay, so number one is going to be our Neptune Systems Apex. They've been around for quite a while. I had a Aqua controller back in, I think, 2001 or 2002. I've had their Junior, I've had their Classic, I've had their Gold Classic, and now I have their, I guess we call it the new or the basic 2016 model. So I've had them for a long time. I have a lot of experience with them, and we're going to go over the pros and cons of buying an Apex. So the first one to consider is going to be the flexibility. What Neptune Systems is known for is providing a multitude of different products that allow you to use just about anything in the automation realm. They have flow sensors, they have leak sensors, they have what's called the Neptune Trident, which monitors your big three, your calcium, magnesium, and alkalinity. They have some lights coming out. They have a new Fuge light coming out. They have, let's see, they have a pump. They have a doser. They have power bars, power outlets, solenoids. So they got a lot of different products that work within their, let's say, ecosystem, and they all work together so you can program different things to work off of other things, which is really nice. So the second thing is kind of what I said about flexibility is they have a lot of multiple products. So like I said, the Trident's a big deal here for most people. So one of the other things that's great about the Apex is they have a wireless and they have a wired controller. This is a big deal for people, especially in the IT realm, that have done, you know, wireless networking and main networking for a living, like myself. And I find that anything that's hardwired seems to always work better and be more reliable. So the fact that the Apex has the hardwired connection makes it, to my opinion, be a little more reliable on the networking side. One of the biggest things about Neptune that you're going to see is they have a huge media and online presence. You can find just about anything about Neptune, not only on YouTube, but Facebook, Instagram. They have a number of forums. They have a help forum. Um, they have a number of different ways to get a hold of them. Very big media and online presence. So if you're ever having issues with their product, generally you don't even need to contact them directly. You can contact someone like myself or someone in my group. You can contact a number of people on forums, YouTube, like I said, and get support, which is really big nowadays. Going into what I just mentioned, a multitude of support options. So they have the ability to get support, right, normal way with a phone call. Some of these other companies don't even have a phone number to get a hold of them. You can, of course, email them. They have a number of support options online with their forums. They're very good with their warranty service. They usually get back to people within, they've gotten back to me within about 6 hours at times. So their support options are great. One thing people don't know about the Apex, it's actually pre-programmed out of the box. So when you buy it and you hook it up, it already has your heater, skimmer, chiller, your basics that you need to get going on a fish tank and aquarium automation right out of the box when you get it. It already has the pH probe, the ORP salinity probe already ready to go on the dashboard. Everything's already pre-programmed, so there's not a lot of programming that you have to do if you just were to buy it and plug it in. Right, so now we'll go over some of the cons. So one of the things about Apex is it can become expensive. So when you first buy it, you're roughly going to spend about $500 for the main basic kit. But as you start to really get into automation, you're going to start to realize that it can and is expensive over time. For someone like me that has a lot of stuff going on, you can get into the thousands easily. So whenever they have a deal going on, I recommend taking a look at them. because they don't happen often. But one of the biggest things that Neptune has is a lot of products, which can, of course, become a little bit addicting and also can become a little bit expensive. One thing about the programming on the Apex is they do have the ability in which to program the Apex with something called tasks. The tasks will program the system for you. But if you really want to get advanced, you're going to need to know the Apex coding. So one of the things about Apex is it's programmed out of the box, but if you want to get really advanced, you can and will need to learn their programming language. Another kind of con that I see a lot of people saying is they just don't like the fact that it's orange and gray. Some people love the orange and gray, some people don't like the orange and gray. But that, again, is something that I notice more often than not. One thing that Apex has is every single thing that they sell requires some form of a wire. They usually will use what's called their Aquabus cable. It looks like a USB cable, and it plugs into all of their devices. All of their leak sensors, all of their sensors, their Trident, their dose, everything requires some form of a wire to plug into it. The Aquabus can generally be about 150 feet, but some of their other products, they recommend being a little closer to the tank. So just remember, anything with Apex is going to require some form of a wire to hook it up. One thing that I've actually wondered why they don't have this, or maybe they will in the future, is no ability to back up your system to the cloud when it's completed. Some of the other systems I'm going to mention will have the ability to automatically back up your system. So in case there's a failure, in case one of your devices breaks, let's say your controller breaks, you have the ability in which to back it up to a cloud, which is really great. Apex does have the ability to back it up to your computer in a file, but it doesn't do it through a cloud. Okay, so the next one on our list is the GHL Profilux. They have a couple different versions of the Profilux. We're not going to go into specifics. We're just going to go through their main system, which is the Profilux 4. One of the big things about GHL is their track record for reliability. Not to say that the Neptune Apex isn't reliable, and not to say that the Hydros isn't reliable, but if you go on forums or if you go around town and talk to people, GHL is known for the reliability. It's a German-made product. Most German-made products, as you well know, are very well made, well built, don't have as many problems. I haven't experienced it. I haven't had a GHL long enough to notice any issues or not having any issues with it. But if you go around, you're going to hear a lot of people talk about reliability on the GHL. One thing about the GHL I really like is it's attractive. It looks very futuristic. It looks kind of cool. If you're trying to make something more modern looking, the GHL definitely looks more modern. As you all know, I'm not a big fan of the different color pattern that Neptune uses, and Hydros I think is just a little bit too colorful in my eyes. The Hydros also has cords kind of sticking out of it, whereas the GHL, everything's in the back, so you don't see all the cords. Same with the Neptune, all their cords come from the bottom, which can be a pro, can be a con, but with the GHL, everything is nice and neat in the back, so it can be very attractive looking to the eye. One thing GHL has is more robust sensors, specifically their flow sensors. Their flow sensors are very well made. They are more expensive than the competitors. Most of their sensors are well built to last a long time. So just know when you're getting a GHL, you're going to get some really well-made, high-quality sensors. What I like about the GHL also is that it uses Cat 5, 6, 7 for communication, which means if you have a house that's already pre-wired with Cat 5, which most homes nowadays are that you purchase, you're not going to have to do a lot if you want to have remote locations for your products because it uses Cat 5. Also, there's a 350-foot range on it, whereas with the Aquabus, they tell us that it's got about 150 feet on their Aquabus cable. Hydros uses Cat 5 as well. However, with Cat 5 in both the GHL and the Hydros system, you do need power on both sides. Whereas with the Hydros, you can get away with Cat 5 and providing power with the Cat 5 at up to, I believe it's 15 feet on the Hydros. So the fact that it uses Cat 5, Cat 6 communication is really nice and gives you the flexibility of a system or a home that already has Cat 5. The GHL has an integrated display, unlike the other two systems. The display itself will show you alarms. It'll show you exactly what the alarm is. It'll say if your pH is too high, what the pH is. It also has colors for different alerts, which is really neat. You can adjust the colors, you can adjust the brightness. Also, their power bar lights up, which is kind of neat to coincide with the display. So the colors will match. So if you have a power bar underneath a stand and you need to see what's going on, it has the ability to show you a different color for that. So let's go through some of the cons of the GHL. One of the biggest things about GHL that I don't like is the programming. The programming is absolutely atrocious. It's extremely difficult. If you really want to know how to program GHL, you're going to have to do a lot of research before you purchase one. So just be aware when you get a GHL, plan on learning programming because it's not simple in any regards. It took me a while just to figure out very basic things like turning on a skimmer. Leak sensors are very difficult to program. Unlike the Hydros and the Apex, they have, Apex has task, Hydros has just simple programming. There is no task, there's no simple programming for the GHL. So just be aware if you're going to be doing the GHL that you really do some research on the programming beforehand. Kind of like what I said earlier about the Neptune. I like the fact that the Neptune has a hardwire and a wireless connection. The GHL and the Hydros have only wireless controllers. So you can't plug them into your network. If there's an issue, you're going to have to make sure you have a real strong wireless network going to it. So that's something that I don't like about controllers. If they're only wireless, there is a potential for issues down the road. One thing about GHL compared to the other two systems is probably going to be the most expensive system. The one main mega set, which is what they call, is going to usually be about $100 more just to start. So your Apex is going to be around $500 to start. Your GHL is going to be about $600. All of their products are also more expensive. Their sensors are more expensive. So their power bar isn't as expensive as some of their competitors, but as I go through the bullet points here, you're going to see why the power bar can actually be more expensive. Number 4, kind of like the Apex, everything needs a wire, needs a Cat 5 wire to communicate. So just be aware there's nothing wireless that can communicate with it. And as I was mentioning on bullet point 3, the value to price is not apparent. And what I mean by that is if you think about it per plug or per outlet or per sensor, the price is actually more expensive than both the Hydros and the Apex. The power bar that GHL supplies is a 6-plug output, and I believe it's $150. If you look at the Apex for $250, they give you 8 plugs. They also give you 3 additional 1-link plugs. They give you 2 24-volt plugs, and they give you 3 Aquabus, which also power things. So you're getting a lot more value out of that $250 than you are with the GHL, which is strictly 6 plugs. With the Hydros, you can kind of think of it the same way. The Hydros has a 4-plug outlet with USB, so let's just say it's 5 plugs for, I think it's $30. So if you do price per plug and you were to start adding things up, you will find that the GHL is going to always be the more expensive of the two because you're not really getting the value out of each plug, whereas you are with the Apex or the Hydros. One thing about the GHL that I find very disconcerting is there's not a lot of online presence. And what I mean by that is you're not going to find a lot of forums, you're not going to find a lot of videos, you're not going to find a lot of people that talk about GHL, even in my Facebook group. It's one of those products that not many people have, specifically here in the United States. It's still not popular right now. It's probably more popular outside of the United States. But if you're looking for a lot of information on it, you're not going to find a lot of information on it. So just be aware of that when you buy a GHL. One thing that's really interesting about the warranty of the GHL is if you do have an issue with it, instead of you sending the product in or instead of them giving you a new product as an advanced replacement like Neptune does, you're going to have to repair it yourself, which is really interesting. So when I say warranty process is lacking, what I mean by that is the warranty process is very interesting in that you have to fix it yourself, which I found to be very strange. There's not many companies that tell you, hey, we're going to send you parts to fix it yourself. Now, I don't know about boards. I don't know about soldering. I never really got into that with them when I discussed this with them. But the fact that they send products out to repair themselves is a little strange. So that's the GHL Profilux. Okay, so now we're going to talk about the CoralVue HYDROS, which is kind of new on the scene. Um, One of the things about the Hydros is it's going to be cheaper. It's a solution that's coming out to give you a good product for a cheaper value. I say it's a cheaper solution because as you add devices to the Hydros, it can actually become more expensive than the other solutions. I actually have a video on this if you go back and take a look where I compare the Apex pricing to the Hydros pricing, and you find out that as you add more things to the Hydros, it actually becomes more expensive. So the initial upfront cost is generally going to be less, but as you add things, it's actually going to be more. Whereas it can be the difference between the Apex and the Hydros or the GHL and the Hydros is the Apex has a higher essential or initial cost, but as you add things, can actually become cheaper than the Hydros. So just be aware of that. The next thing is it's extremely easy to install. Everything is color coded, everything has a place. They have different connections for different probes and different slots for different input devices that you can only plug into one place. And again, everything's color coded. It could be very simple for any just beginner reefer out there to figure out how to install it. And in the same breath, it's very easy to program. Everything has drop down menus. It's really simple. You can get really advanced, of course, but right out of the box, it's extremely simple for most people to program. And that's one thing I really like about the Hydros is for any person that's never programmed before or never had a controller, this will be very simple for them. It also has a wireless power bar, which is different than both of the previous units, the Apex and the GHL. The wireless power bar works off of Wi-Fi, so you can actually put it anywhere in the house, and it gives you 4 plugs and a USB plug as well to plug in anything you want anywhere. So if you had a remote water mixing station or a remote frag tank and you just need to plug in a couple things, you don't need to run any wires, unlike the GHL and the Apex, which is a really interesting and cool feature that it has. So one of the great things about the Hydros, it actually has the cloud backups, which the other ones don't have. It gives you the ability to back up your entire system to the cloud in case something crashes. One other thing that's really kind of interesting about the Hydros is it uses something called the collective. And what that collective does is if one of your controllers goes down, the other one takes over, which is really interesting and a kind of intuitive way of using the system. But it does have the ability to back up from the cloud. The connections are solid, and what I mean by that is they're all BNC connections, which means once you plug them in, they're not going anywhere. All the connections are color coded, which makes it easy. They are splash proof, so you can pretty much mount these up there and not have to worry about water getting on them. So they got really good connections. I think the Apex and GHL connections are a little flimsy. They come out really easily, especially if you're working on the tank often. So some of the cons, as I said, a pro would be the wireless power bar. That's also a con, and this is the reason for it. Wireless power bar is based off of your wireless connection in your home. So if your Wi-Fi goes down or you're having interference in your Wi-Fi, there's a chance that the power bar might turn on or do things you don't want it to do. So I can see that becoming an issue, whereas a hardwired power bar like the Apex and the GHL have are a little more reliable and a little more knowing what's you're gonna really know what's gonna go on. Whereas this could be a big variable in the system. A second con is kind of similar to the power bar is the controller is also wireless, similar to that at GHL, which I mentioned can possibly be an issue in terms of reliability. Um, as the Hydros and as the CoralVue is still new, there are still very limited products, and that's to be assumed on a product that's only been out for 6 months. I'm sure they will come out with newer and more advanced products, but right now it's very basic. They got leak detectors, auto top-offs, probes, sensors, no salinity probe, just be aware of that. Both the GHL and the Apex have salinity, but the Hydros does not. It's still new to the market, so we know the Apex and the GHL have been out for so long. They're try and true products, and you don't have to really worry about them as much as possibly the Hydros. I say it can be expensive. I've had a lot of backlash for this. Again, the Hydros can be expensive because of their collective. So as you buy more products, you actually have to buy more modules, or we consider them controllers. So you got to buy more controllers, and the controllers aren't cheap. They're $200 to $500. Now they do have a new Sense bar, which is a little cheaper, and I hope they come out with more products. But just know that eventually the Hydros can become expensive. Similar to GHL, the Hydros has very limited online presence. They don't have a lot of forums out there and a lot of groups to talk about it. My group, we talk about Hydros, but there's still not a lot of people in our group that have it. So just be aware that you're not going to see a lot of online presence for the Hydros. And the last thing, you're going to need multiple controllers to accomplish very similar tasks that the Apex and GHL do. I don't know if I like the fact that there's multiple controllers. They think it's a pro because if one goes down, the other one takes over. But again, it can become expensive. And if you just needed to see the pH on another tank, you have to get a whole new controller. So, and that's $450. So just know that you're going to need multiple controllers to do multiple things and more advanced things, and it can become expensive. Okay, so we went over the big three automation systems out there, or controllers, and of course one of them that's not mentioned is the Felix, which is just coming out. There's also something called a Reef factory. There's a bunch of other companies out there, but the big three here in the United States are going to be your Apex, GHL, and Hydros. So my overall impressions of them would be the Apex is your great all-around automation solution. It's going to give you monitoring. It's going to give you controllability. They got an app. They got a browser. Everything we discussed. They're going to give you kind of the best of all worlds. The one thing about Apex is just be prepared that you're going to spend some money if you really want to get a top quality automation system in there. You're going to need to get a lot of different products if you really want to go crazy. But if you just want a basic monitor or basic system, just plan about $500 to start. I would highly recommend that you go online and do your research on programming the Apex if you choose to go into the more advanced type programming. Again, they have tasks that essentially do it for you. But if you really want to get more advanced with your Apex, I recommend doing some research before you get an Apex. Now, GHL, of course, well built, but very difficult to program. So if you go out and buy a GHL, again, I would do the same thing, do a lot of research on programming, really get used to how you're going to program it. You don't want to buy the GHL, plug it into your system, and just assume it's going to work right off the bat for you. It can be very difficult to program, and I highly recommend that you do some research before you buy a GHL. I think it looks really cool. Again, I don't really like the orange and gray per se, but I think the GHL looks really good. Based on experience of others, not myself, we find that the GHL is a very reliable solution. Again, we don't know the reliability of Hydros. It's just too new. Apex has a couple products that have had some issues over in the past, but generally the GHL has been well known for a very reliable solution. Hydros, very basic programming. When I say very basic, it's super simple. Even if you're not into programming, know how to program, have ever programmed, the Hydros is really simple for just a basic person to go out there and pick it up and plug it in. I think it's a great starter automation system because there's a lot of stuff it's lacking in terms of getting the true automation. I don't like the fact that it's wireless power bars, as I mentioned. Power bars only have 4 outlets. Some of the larger competitors like GHL and Apex have much more outlets. So it's a great starter solution. Again, it can be cheaper, especially if you're doing a real basic system off the bat. But if you're not going to be doing a basic system, it can become really expensive. I did a video on the comparison between Hydros and Apex and its pricing, and you can take a look at it and see what you think based on all their products. I also have a complete series of Apex versus GHL that you can watch. It's a 15 episode series of how I go through all the different functions and how GHL works and how Apex works. Okay, so I hope you liked this video. If you did, give it a thumbs up. Please go ahead and subscribe if you haven't subscribed already. We have live streams every week. I'm going to try to get out more videos similar to this, but this is a really good starter video for anyone out there looking to buy an automation system to get your feet wet. Thank you for watching, and I hope you have a wonderful day.